The Tonali and Fernandes circus rolls on, and the longer it rolls, well, you know the rest. Apparently, though, Tonali wants to honour his word to De Zerbi. Gary was there when he gave it. Meanwhile, the Savinho saga has officially jumped the shark. 3 windows, no progress. It's all just too silly. Antonin Kinsky's redemption arc is complete. A new 5-year deal with Fraser Forster Light arriving as backup, or is he? Talking of redemption, Djed Spence is playing at a World Cup. Now, his refusal to shake Thomas Partey's hand was a pretty clear statement of principle, which I support. But are some Spurs fans suddenly moral crusaders because Partey's an alleged rapist, or just because he was a gooner? Vina told the fan advisory board that football is now at the centre of club decisions. Now, as opposed to before, when it was an optional extra. Meanwhile, the Lewis family have pumped another £100 million into the club. Is that for players? It better be. We can't start another season with Richie leading the line. Sorry, Julie. Our buy young and hope for the best model doesn't seem to appeal to RDZ. It looks like kids will be dropping like flies. Berival, Vuskovic, Saar, Divine, Veliz, he's gone. And now Mikey Moore is tipped for another loan. No! We'll pop into room 101 and make some pointless England versus DR Congo World Cup predictions, so strap in. It's Nice One, Cyril.
Nice one, Cyril.
So welcome to Nice One, Cyril. I'm Simon Lipson. I bring moderate impressions and disproportionate ranting. Julie Welch is here. She brings perspective, intelligence, and the occasional beautifully judged fuck off. Kev Acott's here. He brings tactical observations and the facial expression of a man whose wheelie bin's just been nicked. And Eady Beeson joins us. She brings optimism, but she's young. All right, well, look, welcome one and all. So we've got lots to talk about. Let's start with this Tonali and Fernandes malarkey. Kev, we hear on the Gary grapevine just a few moments ago that he's been offered £275,000 per week on a 6-year contract. This is basically costing Spurs the entire value of the ground just to get this geezer on board. And I don't know, I'm not that convinced. We talked to Steve Perryman last week. He wasn't particularly convinced by Tonali either. A, is it going to happen? And B, if it does, are we getting our money's worth?
I don't know. He's not someone who stood out for me when I've sort of seen Newcastle matches. He's not, from what everyone says, he's pretty good. I'm not sure pretty good is what we want. And my worry is, I was thinking about this earlier, that Levy did this as well, that they act like ruthless businessmen and then they get a bit frightened and they jump in and do things to try and prove they're not just ruthless businessmen, they're proper Tottenham fans. Levy made so many poor decisions, I think, based on that, based on pressure from fans saying, do something, and he would just do something. And on the whole, not all, but on the whole, they were crap decisions. And I worry that we're going to overpay for, not necessarily for Tonali, but for someone. Everyone knows how desperate we are. And they want to try and prove to us that they're doing something, they're investing in the squad. So I think it might be the case that actually they are prepared to pay an absurd amount of money for Tonali. I don't know. I don't feel it's a terrible decision to bring him on board, but I'm not inspired by it either, really.
It doesn't seem, Eady, doesn't really, it's Eady, isn't it? I keep calling you Eady. Eady, let's get that right. Eady, it doesn't strike me as the kind of, blowing everything out of the water, exciting, fabulous signing that we were all hoping for. For me, I don't know where those people are, frankly, but I mean, if it were me, I would say Wharton is a better buy, probably cheaper. And then there's talk about Fernandes, who, let's be honest, none of us really it hadn't made much of an impression on us, had he? I'm certainly not me, and I don't know anyone who really knows much about him. We've all watched the YouTube videos now, but this, there's a lot of money being bandied about, supposedly, but not really that exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I am honoured to be here on the pod, as always. I'm, as you know, not thrilled to be talking about transfer rumours at all because I'm having a lovely summer watching football that I don't really care about. So my research into this has all primarily been done in the last 3 hours. I think Tonali, I'm glad that both of them are under 40. That seems exciting for us.
Yes, yeah, good shout.
Tonali, I saw in 35 matches, has had no goals and 2 assists at Newcastle. Fernandes' record looks better, but I think I'd agree neither of them fill me with excitement. I mean, we don't know till they get here, and we don't know if they're going to. We don't know till they start playing for us, but we don't know if they're ever going to. I'm finding that I'm frustrated at you, son. I don't want to talk about it.
All right, well, let's move on. Julie wants to talk about it. I know that. I don't know where you stand on these 2 potential purchases. Lots of other names being thrown around. I don't know. It seems to me it's just a mug's game to keep, following these leads that people like, I don't know, O'Keefe and various podcasts of renown throw randomly into the air. But at some point you want to kind of crystallise on something, don't you?
Well, Tonali, when he first came to Newcastle, his first season, before he was suspended, I thought he was fantastic. Great player, would have loved him then. He's a bit sort of vintage almost now. And I think that the numbers being bandied around are just ridiculous. I really do. He's not worth that. Harry Kane's contract extension, there's been a sort of pause on it, and Barcelona are apparently in for him. And I thought, just bring Harry back. Please bring Harry back. But of course, it won't happen. And Fernandes,
No.
I mean, I agree that I mean, when he was as a West Ham player, he was all right, but it was quite easy to look all right for West Ham last season. Anybody with who could sort of kick a ball in vaguely the right direction looked like a Ballon d'Or winner. And of course, there's nothing else going on. That's the thing, apart from the World Cup. I was reading on Twitter today about Fernandes. Spurs are going all in. They've rolled the dice at the final hour to beat United to his signature. And you just think, oh, for God's sake, and it's been like that for about a week now. It was just remembering last close season, the trauma of Gibbs White and Eze. And it's kind of working up.
Yeah.
I'm kind of feeling like that now. This is just not going to happen.
I'm afraid you're right. It does feel like that. This is just trundling on. No obvious conclusion in sight. Just another tweet that regarding Fernandes, which said, providing Tottenham meet West Ham's valuation of 85 million for Mateus Fernandes and offer higher wages, it puts Man United in, and this is in capital letters and bold, extremely difficult position. Okay, so that covers that. Kev, I was listening to a podcast for as long as I could bear, a Spurs podcast. They were talking about Fernandes, and they, to a man, concluded that his range of passing is unbelievable. His range of passing. They all said it. Range of passing. Now, I've looked at the YouTube. I'm sure you have of this guy. He can pass. I'm not seeing Glenn Hoddle.
No, I don't. We're not going to see Glenn Hoddle, are we? I don't know. It's just like it's an ongoing soap opera, isn't it? I mean, every couple of hours there's a new story or a new spin on the story. Personally, I wouldn't ever listen to podcasts. I think that's your big problem there, Simon. Don't listen. And everyone listening to this,
couldn't agree more.
Everyone listening to this, please stop listening to podcasts. It doesn't do anyone any good. Yes, I mean, I think Fernandes and Tonali coming into the current squad would improve the squad. I really do. They'll give us a little bit more in midfield, but we need more than a little bit more. We really do. And if it was the two of them and two other bloody good midfielders, great. I'd be happy with both of them, but I'm just not sure we're going to get those other two. I think we may well get the two of them for inflated price.
My favourite tweet about this whole scenario was this one: buy both and stop mucking around. Which is, I suppose, that's one way to do business at the £100 million level. But on the other hand, it probably doesn't work like that. Let's have a chat, Eady, about Antonin Kinsky. Now, we've talked about this before, that, his redemption arc is the stuff of dreams, really. We went all the way from being hauled off at Madrid after 17 minutes by the not very paternalistic whatever his name was, Tudor, to becoming what it looks like our number one. It looks as though De Zerbi has made that decision, and we've brought in Dubravka, who's a 37-year-old creaky old geezer. It looks like as backup. Is that your reading of this, or is Dubravka coming in as number one, or is he coming in as number three, and we're going to get, I don't know, James Trafford or something?
Kinsky as number one would, out of those options, would be the best. I'm not happy about the Dubravka signing at all. I know that Kinsky was incredible for us in the last few matches, and I'm thrilled about that. And I think it would be a mistake to not be starting him for a little while. But I do worry that there is some recency bias to it, and that we aren't taking into account how few matches he had and how much better our defence got at the same time as he started being our number one keeper. I do have a lot of misplaced love for Flappy, which, I'll be honest, you guys rid me of some of my more emotional love for him by saying stats that really surprised me about how poor he has been. But it does look like he's going, and I don't begrudge Tottenham that. I do begrudge Tottenham replacing him with a 37-year-old. I don't think that makes sense. As we did that with Joe Hart. He was around for 6 months we had him for, and then we instantly have to buy again. And I just think maybe that's too much pressure on Kinsky to be our starter without a decent backup.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, that. I mean, it's if Kinsky isn't the guy that he looked like in those last 7 games, if he turns out that's on 15 games evidence not to be that guy, then we are loved with the 37-year-old geezer with funny knees and, certainly not the best number one in the world. Just so our listeners understand, Eady lives on a boat, and just as we were listening to her there, somebody went by in a canoe. So and all that noise behind her.
Sorry.
I think there's a school. I don't know, but anyway, you get it all on this podcast. Everything you could possibly wish for. Now, Julie, I know you always loved Flappy, just because it meant you could say Flappy, but there's no way he would want to be a number 2, is there? And it does seem as though if Kinsky is number 1, and that's the conclusion we've reached on no evidence whatsoever, other than the fact that he's just been awarded a 5-year contract, Flappy seems to have options back in Italy, and you wouldn't blame him for going.
I think, the sooner, if I were Flappy, I'd probably want to put, as many miles between him and Tottenham as possible. He was good at one stage, but everybody takes the piss out of him. If he goes to Inter, well, I think good luck to him. And I'm quite happy with Kinsky being number 1. I think he'll grow into the role more and more. I don't specifically object to a 500-year-old backup keeper either, because, all footballers are getting old these days. I mean, if you've got Modric at 41 or whatever it is, and I think Ronaldo's now about 90, footballers can sort of do the business now in middle age.
Especially goalkeepers, of course.
Yeah. I mean, actually, Pat Jennings still looks good for a game or two, if at a pinch. And he's still got nice hair as well.
Great hair.
Grey
Great
hair.
hair.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So, yeah, I know I'm being sentimental about Kinsky, because of the sort of narrative arc of the story, but I think he's okay. He'll be okay. I think the defence is getting a bit sounder. Those words will probably come back to haunt me. But I feel quite optimistic about it, actually. I mean, at least it sounds kind of settled, doesn't it? Unlike our midfield.
So we're talking about redemption arcs there. Kinsky's one. The other, I think, Kev, is Djed Spence. We talked about his story before, dismissed by Conte as a club signing, chucked out on loan left, right and centre, came back and in a kind of a needs-must situation, he was stuck in at left back and suddenly, oh, hello, he's actually a good player, this guy, and a good player out of position. So here he is at the World Cup. And in the match against Ghana, he refused to shake hands with Thomas Partey. And he said this: "I don't shake hands with men who are accused of assaulting women. Whether he's guilty or not isn't for me to decide. But personally, I don't feel comfortable showing that kind of respect while those allegations are hanging over him. I just hope the case is handled properly and that justice is served." Where do you stand on that? Should sportsmen just say, look, fuck it, what you do in your private life is what you do, and I'm going to respect you as a sportsman? Or do you stand by that kind of, those principles?
No, I mean, good for him to express principles. I think on the whole, footballers don't. They're very careful. The impression I got from what I read was it wasn't just about Partey's alleged offences. It was also about him converting to Islam and then deconverting again. And I think there were a few things that had pissed off Djed Spence, not just what he's been accused of. So, but actually, regardless, to actually say this is how I feel and to express that very, very publicly, well done. I mean, he's got that kind of personality. I mean, I think we've seen signs of that already, haven't we? With Djed Spence, he does sort of express himself quite strongly. But one of the things this is actually like a premature Room 101. Two different people this week have said, well, how come Djed Spence is playing for England then? These are non-Tottenham fans. And I found myself defending the choice of Djed Spence playing for Tottenham. And I thought, you don't know. You haven't watched him, have you? You don't have any loyalty to him. And I get that. But it's almost like, I think England fans have, these are the okay players and these are the not okay players. Someone like Djed Spence should be playing for our country. He's not good enough. Maybe not. Maybe he wouldn't be in the ideal first 11, but he's worked bloody hard for us the last couple of years, and I'm really glad. I'm glad he's playing for England.
Me too. I mean, I think there's a bit of a Trent Alexander-Arnold fetish amongst certain people. Henry Winter, for example, he starts every sentence with Trent Alexander-Arnold, and I think of course we know Trent's a good-ish passer of the ball. He does give it away a lot. But I don't know, if Mbappe is running at our defence down the left-hand side, I'd much rather have Djed Spence there than anyone else, frankly. And like you, I've been reading a lot of this anti-Djed stuff. And I was listening to a podcast, quite a respected podcast the other day, and they were saying, so right back now we've lost Quansah and we've lost Reece James, and I suppose we could put Chalobah there, or we could, I suppose, move Quansah there. I'm thinking, is it the last fucking resort that you put an actual right back who's very good? He's not the best in the world, but he's very good at right back. It's that he's been so dismissed by certain factions, and I think this is ridiculous. He's a very good athlete, and the fact that he's in the England side, having proved himself as a left back, which he isn't, I think speaks volumes for him. There we are. Look, I've said. By the way, going back to the non-handshake, Eady, Alison Rudd, who we've given quite a lot of stick to because she gives Spurs so much stick. She did make a very good point. She said this, that you wouldn't allow a man who's been charged with and will be standing trial for 7 rapes to work in any other profession. In football, he's allowed to play. The Canadians wouldn't have him, but generally speaking, we've allowed him to play with this hanging over him. Now, look, I don't know about you, I believe in, innocent until you're proven guilty, of course. But could you imagine an executive working for a company, or I don't know, a dustbin man working for the local authority, having been found that there's sufficient evidence to charge him and to try him, would he still be working?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in some ways you're being a little bit optimistic, and that we do see people with credible accusations in lots of roles. But I agree that in sports and in the entertainment industry in particular, people bend over backwards to turn a blind eye to it, when really what they feel is, I care more about the football and whatever I think he brings to my club, which isn't much, let's be fucking honest, more than I care about women. I thought it was brilliant that Djed did that, and I liked how he spoke about it afterwards, that he didn't overly make it about himself, but he also did make it emotional, which I think we sometimes miss in conversations about like cancel culture. We get very bogged down in all the morality and the legality of it, when I think a more honest answer, and an answer that I respect more, is I don't want to shake his hand. And that's that, and he shouldn't, and I don't either. Yeah, I was really pleased with how he did that. I thought he made us proud as Spurs, and I was going to say, and England.
Yeah.
I don't know if I feel enough about England to say that, but yeah, I was really pleased with it.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, and I applaud him totally for that conduct. He did the right thing in my book. But there is a bit of a double standard going on here, isn't there, Julie? Because a lot of Spurs fans are saying, yeah, of course he shouldn't shake Partey's hand because he's a fucking rapist. But I wonder if a lot of those people, their real beef is that he was playing for Arsenal when all of this happened, and that he's a gooner. That's it. That's the real beef. Because I wonder how many of them would have said, yeah, well, Deserby, so what if he said that about Mason Greenwood? That's okay, but what Partey did is terrible. I mean, okay, there are degrees of poor behaviour, immorality, whatever you want to call it, but do you think there are double standards here? Julie, can you hear us? Brilliant question that I put together there and constructed with such care was for Julie, but Julie is not hearing us, sadly, and she's had to depart. So we'll have Julie back next week. It's just the three of us now, Kev and Eady. Kev, can you remember what the question was that I just put to Julie? Something to do with double standards, I think.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think you're right. I think in certain cases there are double standards, and if you imagine how we would have dealt with as a fan base, would have dealt with Partey if he'd been a Spurs player, there would have been excuses made for him. I'd like to think none of us would have done that. It's difficult. I think the extra venom towards him is because he was at Arsenal, and just gives us something else to have a go at him about. I worry. I've actually seen a couple of things, and I don't know. I know we shouldn't take any notice of anything on social media, but a couple of suggestions that maybe Greenwood might come to Tottenham. Now that would be a test of how moral, we were as a group of fans. What would you do? Would you could object to it? You could publicly say, not in my name, I don't want this man coming to Tottenham. But if they bought him, what would we do? Would we stop going? Or would we start just trying to find a way to come to terms with it? It's difficult. It's really difficult.
Yeah, and we kind of made our peace with the De Zerbi situation, re Mason Greenwood, didn't we? But of course, he did such a great job, and it's kind of shunted into the background. And I think you, Kev, even suggested that might happen if he saved us. And yeah, you can see that. And if Mason Greenwood turns up, it will be, I think, extremely uncomfortable. And yet, if he scores a hat trick on his first game, it's very easy to, I suppose, to sweep that under the carpet and focus on the football. But for me, it would be difficult. A lot of the Arsenal fans I noted were saying, "Yeah, it's just because he's a Gooner. You will love Gaza." Well, I don't love Gaza. I hate Gaza. I can't stand him. It's a wife beater. I love Gaza the footballer, but no, I've got no time for him whatsoever. So there we are. All right, let's move on. Eady, there was a meeting of the big knobs and the Tottenham Hotspur fan advisory board. And at this meeting, Vina said, "Yes, we're going to now put football front and centre," which does beg the question: what were they thinking before? But it's like we've said this before on the pod. It's such an admission of incompetence that a football club, the entire edifice, everything, the structure, it's all built on a football club, and yet that's the last thing that was in their minds. And it makes no sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sort of surprised that it's like they said the quiet part out loud by even saying that, because we know that they haven't seen it as a football club. At the end of last season, I remember saying to Dad that there is a world in which this awful season and coming 17th and the way that it happened could be the best thing for us for years to come, because it now forces them to put some money in and to not be so complacent about the football side of the football business. But you can't, none of us trust them for a second. Everything they say, is completely useless. And I know we'd sort of have a go at them either way, but we're not going to trust it till we see some change.
Yeah.
But it's better than not
It's just
saying
words, isn't it? It's well, yeah, I agree. But it's just words at the moment. Nothing really happens until we see, 6 shiny new signings that bespeak a hierarchy that really means what it says. We're going to put football first. One of the things we can't do, Kev, is persist with Richarlison. And you could argue even Solanke doesn't do it. He's not good enough for what we need. If we're going to be an attacking side and deserve his image and have wingers and, people passing through the lines and all that malarkey, you can't have either of these guys as your principal striker.
No, you can't. And, I'm definitely with Julie on the bring Harry back thing. I mean, assuming that doesn't happen, then I don't know. We just need a confident, competent number 9, really.
Yeah.
The old school. I mean, I have no idea where, because Tony was linked with us, wasn't he, for quite a while, sort of last year. I'd be okay with him. I mean, another slightly unpleasant man, but not in the same way. But I don't care about the slightly unpleasant. I think he's a talented player and he could score goals. The idea of someone like Tony with maybe Solanke, that could work. I agree. In a Champions League, in a top 4 side, Solanke wouldn't be there. I like him, but he's not that good. Not good enough. So we need to, ideally, we do need 2 strikers, good strikers, not young, inexperienced strikers, because I think there's a number of them. We know there are, but to come through over the next few years. But we need ready-made strikers.
There is talk, isn't there, that Lancashire is being groomed, and that groomed is a horrible word, that he's being nurtured as a first team player this year, but he's clearly not going to be leading the line on a regular basis. And of course, we don't have European matches against rubbish to try kids out in. Eady, other players that look like they could be on the way out. Veliz has gone. He turned out not to be the next Harry Kane. He's gone to a club called Bahia. Made no impression whatsoever, as far as I can tell. And we're talking about maybe Sarr going, Berraval. Vuskovic, who's supposedly under offer, a higher offer again by Brighton at the moment. It bespeaks a kind of a sea change, doesn't it? We've been investing in kids and hoping they pay off, which most of them haven't. And De Zerbi saying, no, let's buy established players and you've got a ready-made team. But then that isn't quite so forward-thinking. It's more about the now. Let's get a great team together now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that I'm being grumpy about all the transfer stuff, but I don't inherently disagree with that as a philosophy. I'm just uninspired, I guess, so far. And I'm a little bit surprised about the lack of, there's so many rumours about players who are on their way out, and so many of them I think we would all be okay with seeing the back of. But we usually do that much earlier and the buying much later, and this window it's the opposite way around, which could be a good thing, but I'm finding myself a bit confused about. And now we seem to have like a quite bloated defence, potentially a lot of midfielders coming in. But as you say, there's not a lot of talk about many strikers. I mean, and sort of globally, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but like there are a lack of pure out and out strikers. I don't love Tony. When we were talking about him maybe coming in last year, I was against it. But now, given the conversation, perhaps I should change my standard on what is a bad man and accept it. Because you're right, he would be better. But yeah, I think as long as we don't get rid of all of our young, potentially promising players, I would not want to see Mikey Moore go. But you're right, we need someone mature and established in the first position up front.
Yeah. Absolutely. You mentioned the bloated defence, and there's the talk at the moment, Kev, that Kuti he wants to stay. I don't know if that's attributable to a Gary or whether it's got any, is any truth to that rumour. But it does. If it were true, we suddenly have a surfeit of central defenders, and it would suggest that someone would have to go, or at least one person would have to go.
And in terms of people going that we're going to get good money for, there's Romero, there's Van der Ven, probably no one else that we're going to get significant, well beyond 50, 60 million for. So you wonder whether there's a plan to get rid of at least one of those two. For me, ideally, it would be Romero that went, not Van der Ven, but I'm not desperate for Romero to go. I think if he stayed and made a choice that's because he really wants to do something with us, then great. He's shown enough to suggest that he can be rather better than he was last year. So it could be a good thing if he stays, but we miss out on a lot of money potentially. And he's not so good that I think we should miss out on a lot of money either.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. We don't have that many hugely valuable assets to sell. I mean, they're talking about selling Veraval for 45, 50 mil and Vuskovic for something similar. Well, yeah, that'd be crazy money for kids. I don't think it's viable for either, frankly. But, if we are going to be going big into the marketplace, we've got this 100 million that the Lewises have chucked in, but that might be to service debt. It could be for any number of things. We don't know. We don't know whether it's actually being put towards the transfer funds. The other thing I wanted to talk about, Eady, was we mentioned Mikey Moore there, who's my kind of my podcast favourite, because I think he's something special. I know Kev agrees. But we've had special kids before, and they've come to absolutely nothing. Alfie Devine. Everyone was talking about Alfie Devine. We got him at 16. He scored a goal, didn't he? Was it in a cup game? And we thought, oh, wow, we've got a wonder kid here. And now is he going to Preston for about a couple of mil? Jamie Donnelly is another one we talked about a lot, and he just hasn't really kicked on. He went to Oxford with Lancashire, who has kicked on. And I'm scared to speculate about Mikey Moore, because maybe he isn't. Maybe he was just an outstanding 17-year-old who was too good for his age group, but just isn't going to be good enough as a senior.
Yeah, possibly. I met in the pub a couple of years ago the West Ham youth coach, and I was asking him, but I can't remember what age youth, but I think they were quite young, like not the under 18s. And I was asking him, can you tell? And he was saying no, like you can tell that they're better than other kids their age, but beyond that, you can't tell who are going to be Premier League players or are just very good footballers. So I think, it is impossible to predict the future in that way. But Mikey Moore, I remember I may have slightly changed the story in my mind because of the narrative, but in my head, he played the first match after Kane left and was outstanding. And everyone sang One of Our Own to him. And it made me teary. It was so beautiful. And like, I think maybe the timing, I'm really telling that wrong, that it wasn't immediately afterwards, but it felt so like, the torch has been passed on, you're the new Harry, which is also a ridiculous amount of pressure to put on any 17-year-old. But it would be amazing if he was who we think he might be.
I think there's a kind of a burning desire, isn't there, amongst fans to have a local, a kid who's come all the way through to become a star on the stage. I mean, it doesn't happen very often, does it, Kev? We talked about, Ledley King was one. Not many more Harry Winks, I suppose. You could argue Harry Winks ended up playing for England while he was with us, and he did pretty well. That's not to be sniffed at. Skip never quite became that player. The one who really did, of course, was Harry. And I just wanted to sort of segue into this. Whenever Harry was playing for us, you would have people on Twitter saying, he's fucking rubbish, tap-in merchant, penalty merchant. And of course, we all knew he was a genius, that he could play as a 10, he could play as a 9. He could, he was just imperious. But he gets the same shit playing for England. And when we were the match against, oh God, my head's gone. Who did we play the other day? Panama. That match, he wasn't fantastic in the first half. Who was? But I read several tweets that said Kane is a fucking passenger. He's useless. He never turns up when it matters. This is the bloke who scored 11 World Cup finals goals in 14 matches. And of course, he then went on and scored. And I just wonder, what is it about Harry Kane that it kind of attracts so much detraction is probably the word I'm looking for. People don't rate it, or is it tribal? What is it? What's going on with Harry Kane?
There's something about him. He is not a typical footballer. He's a bit more than a bit. He's very awkward when he's interviewed. He has a bit of a speech impediment. He's sort of one of the slightly weird kids at school. And I think some of it's about that. It's almost like people are put out by the fact he doesn't, just live a stereotypical footballer life and doesn't come across as a stereotypical footballer. I think some of it's that. I think some of it's connected to Tottenham because there is a loathing of the club, which, for whatever reason, I think some of it is more than just rivals hating Tottenham. I think there's a little bit more to it underneath as well. And the fact that he's still seen by us, isn't he, as a Tottenham player, really. So he gets the stick for just the club that he played for when he plays for England. Also, the way he plays, like you said, he can play 9, he can play 10. A lot of the time he plays both simultaneously, doesn't he? And that's and one of the problems for England, because I don't think he's ever quite. This is where I would agree with people who criticise him. I don't think he's ever quite done for England what he could have done. But I don't think that's his fault. I think that's about the way he's been played. If you look at the way he plays for Bayern Munich, if you look at the way he played for us when he was, particularly when he was right at the top of his game, he was playing 9 and 10 simultaneously. And that doesn't fit really with the way Tuchel's playing him or most managers before him. So he's being confined in a way that he hasn't at club level, and I think that's another problem.
Yeah.
So people aren't seeing him as we saw him. They're seeing him play for England, and they don't think he's quite good enough. And I sort of get that a bit.
Yeah. You're right. He's kind of he's not fashionable, and he'll drift out of games because he's not being. No one's passing to him. I can't tell you how many times I've tweeted during England games. Pass it to we've got the best striker in the world. Pass it to him, and he's being kind of just ignored. And whereas at Spurs he was the main man. Everything went through Harry. Eady, I wonder if this is an English football phenomenon. Argentina, everything goes through Messi, right? You have an absolute superstar. You play it through Messi. For many years, Ronaldo was the man for Portugal, and Mbappe has been for several years with France, although they've got others who are almost as good. It seems to me, and I'm going back now to Glenn Hoddle. Now, this before your time, because you're only a youngster, of course, but Glenn, I'm sure your dad's told you everything you need to know, and I'm sure you've watched plenty of Hoddle. He was just a phenomenon, a player that we didn't see in English football. 2-footed, saw everything, could pass it, he could put spin on it, chip it, he could do everything and score great goals. And yet England was so suspicious of him. And I wonder if this is you don't build a team around a superstar. It's all about the corporate thing. We've all got to give something. And I wonder, looking at the way Tuchel has behaved towards Bellingham, who's clearly that guy. It's just a sort of a thread that has been going through English football forever. You don't cater to the genius. You all have to contribute.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that, but I think that's an interesting way of looking at it. I don't know if I watch enough or have historically watched enough English football to know if that's us or just Southgate and Tuchel. But I do think that managers misunderstand him and want him to be the striker that you expect him to be. And in fairness, I think that something about that way that he plays, we didn't really unlock till Mourinho, who didn't do a host of great things for Tottenham. But I sort of always credit him for, I think he was the first manager to let Harry, as my friend who doesn't really care about football referred to it the other day, he's wafting about a lot, isn't he? And I think he let Harry waft about, which is where he is so successful, when he's allowed to do everything. If a team were 10 Harry Kanes, it would be not 11, never in goal again, but 10 Harry Kanes, it would be the best team in the world.
It's so true. It's as a player of immense ability in every facet of the game. The only thing I think, Kev, we might argue that he lacks and always lacked is speed, but I wouldn't say he's slow. And also, the speed is, most of the time, the important speed is in your head, not in your feet. Because I remember John Chidozie, fast as fuck, couldn't play football. And we've now got, Nonu Madueke, who's quick, can't play football. Look, let's move on. We'll have a little go at some World Cup predictions shortly, but let's go into Room 101. We've lost Julie's contribution, but that's fine because you two are going to come up trumps here. Who or what are you putting in Room 101, Kev?
I'm going to go in a sort of non-football direction, really. I'm going to go for Florence Airport, which is the worst airport I've ever been in, and I hate them. And anyone listening to this, don't go. If you're going to go to Florence, go to Pisa or Rome or Munich, anywhere. Don't go to Florence Airport. It's a terrible, terrible airport full of utterly incompetent and very rude staff. So that's I feel better now. And I also the other thing is Florence related, and this isn't a bit of, what do you call it, humble bragging, honestly, because it wasn't really a holiday. But I was in Florence, and we went to the worst cafe I've ever been to. That was also in Florence, and I wish I knew the name of it. I took a photo, but I haven't got it with me. again, rude, terrible, terrible staff and really poor food. So basically, let's put the whole of Florence into room 101.
Florence is in there, and it's, you get it all on this podcast. You get travel tips as well. And by the way, have you been to Lisbon Airport? Because
No, I
that's
haven't.
just a fucking horrible hangar. It's appalling. Anyway, especially when your Wizz Air plane is running about 9 hours late. What have you got, Eady?
I've got the guarantee that neither are as bad as Newark Airport, which is the worst place in the world. And this is also extra sad, Dad, because you used to refer to Florence as a city that you love so much that you almost didn't want anyone else to ever go there. So I'm heartbroken to hear you must have had a terrible trip for it to have fallen so far. My room 101 is sort of on theme for this pod. So a story that I'll keep quite brief is I have a good relationship with the guy who sits next to me at Spurs, been in the same seat for a couple of years. We have a bit of a text relationship, and he'll check in if I'm not at a match. And just before the last match of the season, he sent me a text along the lines of like owing him a kiss if we won. And it really threw me because we don't have any relationship close to that. And I thought he sort of saw me as a granddaughter, not even a daughter. I wasn't quite sure whether he meant it creepily, so I sort of tried to change the subject, and then he, depending on your reading of it, either doubled down or panicked and tried to apologise, but without... It was all quite confusing and in old man tech speak, which is hard to pass anyway. But it annoyed me for a lot of reasons. And one is that particularly older men have a way of being creepy. They aren't creepier than young men. You all have that accolade together. But the older man's method of creepiness tends to be with a room for doubt, to where you feel a bit guilty for calling them out on it. And maybe you're overreacting and they're just being nice. But what it made me realise, that the whole debacle, is that not only have I never felt sexualised at Tottenham, but I've also never felt in any way gendered. Like, I've never felt condescended or unsafe, or as though I had to prove why I'm there because I'm a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so rare and such a lovely feeling. And I said this to a few friends who don't know football. I think they were all quite surprised by that they see football as this incredibly, testosterone-filled place where a woman wouldn't be safe. And that's never been my experience at the ground. And for that, I'm very, very grateful.
Yeah. Well, as an old man, I hope I've never texted creepily. I'm just going to go through all my texts now and make sure I haven't. I didn't know where to go with Room 101 this week because there's so many things pissing me off. One of them is Fabrizio Romano, just because he's Fabrizio Romano and he's got 15 million followers and he offers nothing. Absolutely nothing. And people hang on his every word. I don't know what's wrong. So a few people are beginning to see that he is the tap-in merchant du jour, but not enough. The other thing I've seen a lot of this week is, people, names coming up for transfer, and, our fans will go, well, he's a load of old shit. But if RDZ wants him, I want him. I'm thinking, no, you're entitled to think he's shit, and that's fine. Stick to your opinion. Stick to your guns. And the other thing is Bomba, which was suggested by our friend Lee Brown on our WhatsApp group. Bomba, fuck off. But I have settled on this one. It's when you get, it's not football related, it's when you get that email from some obscure company that you dealt with at some point in the past, and it says, we've updated our terms of service. Who cares? Who cares about that? And I'm sure there is some legal requirement, but still, don't waste my time with that shit. I don't care. Keep your terms of service to yourself until I need them. All right, well, that's it. That's a little rant over. I tell you what, let's have a quick think about England playing DR Congo on Wednesday. I will actually be on an aeroplane. I'm flying to France for a month. So don't worry, listeners. I will still be hosting podcasts, but I'm going to be missing that match. And So I don't know. It ought to be easy as piss, but Kev, England, do they remind you of anyone?
England never make anything easy as piss, do they? And they do. England do remind me of Tottenham, really. By which I mean ultimate disappointment, but not just ultimate disappointment, but promise and potential. And you think this time it's going to be different, and then it's not. So there's definitely a parallel there. I don't really care as much. I know I don't care as much about England, so it doesn't bother me as much. If they lose against Congo, I'll be a bit disappointed for a few minutes in a way. And obviously, then I'll rant and rave about how dreadful English football is and how it's all Nigel Farage's fault in some way. But I think they'll be Congo. I think they'll scrape through. And my fear is, I think I said on the WhatsApp group earlier, I think there's a possibility that rather like Arsenal won the league whilst being mediocre, that England may somehow end up winning the World Cup, and everyone will be going, but they were the 9th best team in it. How did that happen? So I guess I'm sort of being positive there, optimistic that we might unintentionally win the World Cup.
It could happen. I mean, I have to say, I think this is the most uninspiring squad I can remember. And I'm finding myself not particularly engaged by the whole World Cup, but especially England. Eady, it's not a tough match against DR Congo. If we come through that, we have to go and play Mexico, probably, or Ecuador, I think it is. But if it's Mexico, in Mexico City, they never lose there. If we win that, we've got to play probably Brazil or Japan. They're playing as we speak. And then probably Argentina in the semis. It doesn't look like, when you think that useless Djed Spence is going to be in the side, it doesn't look like we can possibly make any kind of progress.
No, if we did, it would certainly be undeserved by what we've seen so far. I want Harry to win the World Cup much more than I want England to win the World Cup. Do you know what I mean? I feel he deserves it, and that would show all these fuckers who would still say that he was shit. But I want him to have that. My method for picking World Cup teams is, number one, who has the most Spurs players, and if neither, then which team is the least evil, and if they're equally evil, then just who's the underdog. So on that front, England should be on top for all of us, and we should win it.
Okay, well, look, there we are. You have it. There you have it. We are going to win the World Cup, and I think we'll win the World Cup final with 3 goals from Harry, 1 from Djed Spence, a la Hurston Peters, 66, and everyone will say Spurs won it. Yeah, all right, we can dream. Well, look, thank you to Eady and to Kev, and of course to Julie, who we lost halfway through, but we'll get her back on next week when we sort out her technicals. We are on Twitter, /X, at NiceOneCyrilPod. You can pop over to our website, www.niceonecyrilpodcast.co.uk. All of the episodes are on there. We've got a Facebook page, and we're all over social media and what have you. Why not give us a follow or subscribe, and you'll never miss an episode. Thank you as ever for your company. We always appreciate it. Stay in touch. Let us know what you think. We will be back next week. And until then, come on you Spurs.
Nice one, Cyril.